Attention autonomos and business owners in Spain. New invoicing requirements are being rolled out between 2025 and 2026, and you may have as little as 6 months to become compliant. What are they? How do they affect you? And what do you need to do? That's what we're going to look at in this video. Let's get right into it. If you're new here, my name is Jonny. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living and working in Spain for the past 5 years. On this channel, I talk a lot about life here, about personal finance, investing, saving money, property, along with a whole load of other things related to travel and expat life. So what's this all about? Well, these new invoicing requirements that are being implemented and will be rolled out in the coming 12 to 18 months are essentially part of Spain's new Crea y Crece law, which is create and grow, translated to English. There's kind of three main objectives of this law. One being to combat tax fraud, a second being to improve transparency over financial transactions, and the third I would say is to do with the digitalization of administrative procedures and society in Spain in general. So these new requirements when it comes to invoicing will essentially enhance the verifiability of invoices that are issued from the eyes of the tax authorities. So with these new invoicing requirements, the idea is that invoices, payments, transactions can be easily verified in a sense. And so essentially based on what kind of business you are and the size of your business, these invoice requirements are being rolled out over the next 12 to 18 months, starting in 2025, with the last group of people needing to be compliant with these rules essentially having the deadline at mid-2026, which we'll get into in detail as we go later on in the video. And worth mentioning as well that a lot of these invoicing requirements that are being rolled out now to the entire private sector and to all autonomos and businesses in Spain have essentially been present for companies doing business with the public sector actually for quite a while. So this is essentially expanding the scope of who needs to comply with these requirements from companies doing business with the public sector to all businesses and autonomos in the private sector. So essentially starting this year, all businesses and autonomos must have the capabilities to issue electronic invoices. And as these rules get rolled out over time, there are some specific criteria that needs to be met as well. One of the requirements being that their accounting software is compliant with these new rules as well, such that invoice records can be submitted to the Agencia Tributaria, which is the tax authorities here in Spain. They also need to make sure that the recipients of these invoices have the option to accept or reject the invoice and be able to report payment dates once the invoice has been paid. The accounting software used also must be Verifactu compliant, which means that invoices are verifiable if one day an inspection is required or there is a need to verify that invoice. And in the case that they're not using a Verifactu system and they're not submitting verifiable invoices, invoices need to include security measures like immovable tags or logs to essentially make sure that any alterations to the invoice are tracked and that it hasn't been falsified in any way, shape or form. So very important for businesses and autonomous to be compliant with these new requirements because there are fines and sanctions if they're not compliant. And these fines are pretty hefty as well. We're talking up to 50,000 euros for businesses and autonomos that are not compliant with the new regulation. That means that they don't have verifiable invoices and they haven't adapted to the new legislation. And on the other hand, to the distributors of non-compliant invoicing software, they can receive fines of up to 150,000 euros per year per software that is distributed and that is not licensed per the new regulations. Outside of this, an article online from accounting software provider Holded talks about how non-compliance could potentially affect a business or autonomo's ability to apply for and benefit from the new Kit Digital, which are grants from the government to digitalize business in Spain. Whether that's true or not, I guess we'll see with time. Another point they raise is the possible negative impression and perhaps loss of trust that it transmits towards potential clients or other businesses that would be transacting with the non-compliant business, essentially. Which I think is a reasonable point as time goes on and as this becomes implemented and rolled out. I should say different sources on the internet say different things at this point in time in terms of the magnitude of the fines. There are some that say for non-compliance on invoicing is 10,000 euros, others that say 50,000 euros. Some say that the distribution of non-compliant software is 50,000 euros, whereas others say 150,000 euros. So regardless of this, I think any business or autonomo would find these amounts eye-watering, and I would say it's in their best interests to become compliant so as not to be fined with such significant amounts of money. All right, let's talk now timelines and who needs to do what by when. So it's worth noting here that the dates I'm sharing here are the latest information I have, and I believe these dates are already later than what was initially planned. So there's perhaps a possibility that things get delayed even further. That said, I wouldn't take the chance, and if it were me, I would ensure compliance as soon as possible. And so starting in 2025, i.e. this year, all businesses and autonomos need to be on some form of electronic invoicing software and have the capability to issue electronic invoices. And so as it currently stands, the first group that needs to be ready by July 2025 are businesses that invoiced more than 8 million euros in turnover. So by mid-July 2025, businesses exceeding this turnover need to have their invoicing systems compliant with the new regulation for electronic invoicing as it currently stands. By the 1st of January 2026, the rest of legal entities, so presumably the businesses that have done less than 8 million euros annually in turnover, then need to be compliant with the regulation. And then finally, by the 1st of July 2026 is the time by which all autonomos need to be using compliant system and issuing compliant invoices in line with the regulation. As I say, these are the current timelines, but I believe this is not the first time it's been pushed back, possibly could get pushed back again. But yeah, important to ensure that based on which group you fall in, you are compliant. And so from my perspective, what is the action here for autonomos and businesses? Well, really, it's just to make sure that whatever accounting software you're using, it is compliant with the new legislation. Like a lot of accounting softwares that are already operating in Spain are making the upgrades to ensure that their software is compliant. So if you're using one of these already, if it's a DIY like online invoicing platform, then just make sure that they are up to date and compliant. If they're not compliant and you don't foresee them being compliant in time, then look at other accounting softwares to make sure that you will be compliant in time. This is not tax advice, but maybe if you're an autonomo, maybe see if you can go through 2025 with the current software and then 2026 start with a new software to avoid having to migrate accounting like midway through the year to a new system, which, you know, can be a bit of a pain to do. But obviously if it's necessary, then it has to be done. So yeah, there you go, guys. I hope you find this interesting and helpful. Leave a comment and let me know if you're an autonomo or a business in Spain as well. I'd love to know what you think about this new regulation. And if you want to see more content related to the financial aspect or the business side of living in Spain, then be sure to check out these two videos where you can find out more. So next time, I'll see you in the next one, and let's get this money.